Hello everybody and welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be taking a look at this particular question. So it says write a program in Java obviously to send a number from the client side to the server side. So this is a program that deals in socket programming based on the Java platform. The server will check whether the number is automorphic or not. If it's automorphic, it will return the boolean value true to the client, else return false. So this program is intended to show the process of two-way communication that occurs between client and server using the socket programming technique. So before we can explore the process of finding whether a number is automorphic or not, let us do some background check on what an automorphic number really is. So after a brief search on Google, this is what we get. An automorphic number is an integer whose square ends with the given integer, as 25 square equals 625, 76 square equals 5776. It says something about strobogrammatic numbers read the same after having been rotated through 180 degree. So anyhow, let us just check this article. So an automorphic number is an integer whose square ends with the given integer, as 25 square is 625, 76 square is 5776. So these are some examples of automorphic numbers. So 25, 76 and maybe 6, 5 and so on. Because all of these numbers, when you square them, you get that same number at the end of the squared value. For example, in case of 5, when you perform the square of 5, you actually get 25, and at the end of 25 there is 5. When you do the square of 6, you get 36, and at the end of 36 you get 6. When you perform the square of 76, you get 5776, and there it is at the end of 76, the number 76 itself. So as long as you perform the square of a particular number and you get that same number at the end of the squared value, so that is an automorphic number. So we had briefly touched upon the process of performing two-way communication using socket programming in a previous session. So in this session we'll be solving this particular problem. Okay, so first of all we'll be learning how to code the server side, that is the code for how to write the code for the server, and then we'll explore the client side program. Okay, so so let me just open up this part. So first of all, what we have done is we have imported a couple of packages over here. So import java.net, java.util.star and import java.io.star. Okay, so before going through this particular program, let me just open an article that writes about socket programming in Java. So let me just open up the official tutorial that is made by Oracle Corporation about socket programming. So we'll be let me just open this particular article, reading from and writing to a socket. Okay. So here is an example. So they've given a simple example to show us the process of how you can actually read data from a socket and write the data back to the socket. So here you can see, let's walk. They have given a sample code to show how this is done. So let's walk through the program and investigate the interesting parts. The following statements in the try with resources statement in the echo client. So this program is a part of a program called, this code is a part of a program called echo client. These lines establish the socket connection between the client and server and open a print writer and buffer writer on the socket. So first of all, what they're doing is string hosts equals args0, in port number equals integer.parseInt args1. So we know that to open a connection on the socket from the client side, we need the host name and the port number. So they have taken the host name as a command line argument, as well as the port number as the second argument. So this one represents the first command line argument, that is args0, and this one represents the second command line argument, that is args1. So now they have included the entire block of code inside a try block. So the entire segment of code has been enclosed inside a try block. So first of all, what they're doing is they're creating a socket called echo socket, and they are binding the socket to this particular host name. So the host name is actually an IP address of the host to which you want to connect, and the port number is the port number in which you want the host in which the host is gonna be listening to. So whenever you are connecting to a particular host, it will be listening to a particular port number. So this port number is the one that you will have to connect to from the client side. And what is actually a port number? The port number is actually a unique identifiable number that is given to a process that is running on our system. So you can read up on port numbers on Google. If you do a search, you will get some detailed information regarding port numbers. So the port number is used to communicate with a process that is running on a system over a network. Okay, so all processes running on my computer, they have been assigned port numbers. And to communicate with every process, knowing just the IP address of my system is not enough. You also need to know the port number of that particular process or program that we want to communicate with. So after that, they have opened a method of the printWriter class, and they have created an object of the printWriter class, and they have named it out. And they have inside the printWriter out object, what they have done is they have opened the output stream that is associated with echo socket. Okay, because they are going to be using the printWriter class to write some data on the output stream of the echo socket. So this is actually the code of the client side. So here what they are doing is they are using the printWriter class to send some data via the output stream of the echo socket to the server. So the output of the client is actually going to be the input from the input to the server from the client. So the client's output is actually going to become the server's input. And how is it producing the output? By writing some data using the printWriter class. And after that, they have taken, so this is how they are sending the data from the client to the server. And after that, what they're doing is they're creating an object of the bufferedReader class, and then they are using the input stream that is associated with the echo socket. So whenever we create a socket that is an object of the socket class, it has two streams associated with it. One is the input stream for incoming data, and the other is the output stream for any kind of outgoing data. So when you want to send some data via the output stream to the server, you can do it by using the output stream. And to actually send the data, you'll have to use some printWriter class or any other equivalent class, like say you can also use the printStream class, as you'll be using in our program. So these classes are usually used to write formatted data to any output stream. Okay, and you'll have to specify the particular output stream in which you want to write the data. In this case, we are using echo socket, which is the output stream associated with our socket, to write the data to it. And after that, we are creating the bufferedReader object, and this bufferedReader object is created with the intent of reading the data that is sent back by the server to the client. So the server will read the data and it will send it back directly to the client, and it will perform some operation on the data, and it will send the data back to the client. And to read that data, we'll be using the input stream associated with our socket. And after that, they have used another object of the bufferedReader class, and this time they are actually reading some data from the system.in, that is the standard input stream. So they have gone into some details as to what is actually going on here. And so this is actually the client side. So let us go to the server side. So the program that we'll be writing about automorphic number, this will be almost similar to this one. So these two programs, so there is a high degree of similarity with this code and the program that we are going to be writing. So now let us see how we are supposed to write the server code for a socket program, typical socket program. So here also what they are doing is they have taken, so this is the server program code for the server program. The server program creates server socket object in a try with resources statement. So here they have taken the port number as a command line input. So here the port number is entered via the command line when you are running the program. So we are actually not taking the data as input from the console, we are taking it as an input from the command line, and this is actually the first argument of the command line, so it is known as arg0. And after that they have created an object of the server socket class. Okay, so to actually implement a server, we'll have to create two socket objects. One is the standard server socket object and another is the usual socket object. Okay, so the first of all we create a server socket object and we bind it to the particular port in which we want the server to listen to. Okay, so say we want to listen to the port number called 1408. So the client will be sending data to that particular port number and the server will be listening for incoming connections to that port number. So we'll be creating a server socket object which will be listening for incoming connections to that particular port number. And after that we'll be creating an object of the socket class in order to accept the connection from the client. So this one, what it does is it accepts the connection from the client. Okay, first of all this server socket will be listening for the request from the client and this one will be accepting the connection from the client. Okay, after that we'll be using an object of the printWriter class again to get the output stream of the client socket. So this is client socket object is actually an object of the socket class. So printWriter out is actually reading some data, it is writing some data to the output stream of the client socket class. Okay, so this is actually this printWriter out, here it is sending some data back to the client. So whenever you want to send some data from the server to the client, you will be using printWriter once again. So when we wanted to send some data from the client to the server, we used the printWriter class. Now the same thing is happening here. When we want to send data back to the client, we are using the printWriter class and we are writing data to the output stream associated with the client socket. After that we are using the buffered reader and we are creating an object of the buffered reader class. So this is actually used to read incoming data from the server socket. So whenever the client sends some data to the server, it is being read via the buffered reader class using the client socket.get input stream method over here. So this one is done to read the data and this is done to send data back to the client. So here it says if the server socket is a java.net class that provides a system independent implementation of the server side of client server socket connection. The constructor for server sockets throws an exception if it can't listen on the specified port. So here you can see that the entire block of code, it is enclosed inside a try block. So the reason for that is that if for some reason the server socket cannot establish a connection to that port number, it will throw an error. Okay, and what kind of error is it going to throw? It is going to throw an exception. So to handle that exception, either we can use a try catch block or we can use the throw statement. So here they have used the try catch block. Okay, so whenever there is a possibility of any exception that might occur, we'll have to enclose that code segment inside a try catch block, or we can use the alternative way is to use the throw statement. So you'll have to use either of these two methods of exception handling. So here they preferred to use the try and catch block. So the code that is likely to throw the exception, that is included inside the try block, and the handling mechanism that we are going to employ in case exception does occur will be put inside the catch block. Okay, so if you have specified an incorrect port number and the server socket cannot be created or associated with that particular port number, there will be an error. So if for example, if the port is already being used, so if we while assigning a port to the server or to the client, you must make sure that that port number is already not in use by any other processes of your system. So if it is already being used by some other processes of your system, then you are going to face some issues while trying to run the program. Okay, so try to ensure that the port numbers are already not being used. So you can actually, I think there is a way to view the port numbers that are currently being used. One is to use the netstat command. So you can actually run netstat, so let me run it in command line mode. It is administrative mode. So here you can see a list of all the processes that are running on my system, and these are the port numbers that are in use. So here you can see firefox.exe, it is using the port number 1576. So while you are trying to run some program and you are trying to associate it with any port number, you must make sure that it is not sharing any of the port numbers that are already being used by some another program. If it does that, then it is going to be problematic for the process, and it will conflict with that particular program, and I think your Java program that is listening to the port number that is already being used by another process, it is not going to work properly. So if the server binds to its port, then the server socket object is successfully created, and the server continues to the next step, accepting a connection from a client, the next statement in the try with resources statement. So here this line actually accepts the connection from the client. That is client socket, which is an object of the socket class, equals server socket dot accept. The accept method waits until a client starts up and requests a connection on the host and the port of this server. Let's assume that you ran the server program knock server on the computer named knockserver.example.com. So here the server is running on the port number specified by the first command line argument. When a connection is requested and connect successfully established, the accept method returns a new socket object bound to the same local port and has its remote address and the remote port set to that of the client. So when the connection is successfully established, what it does is it creates a new socket object. So here is the new socket object, and it is bound to the same local port, the one that is assigned here, and has its remote address and the remote port set to that of the client. The server can communicate with the client over this new socket and continue to listen for client connection requests and original server socket. So here they have gone into some more details of how to how actually you can read data from the client. So this here, this is as I told you before, this can be used to send data to the client using the output stream. So here the output of the server is going to become the input to the client, just as the output of the client was the input to the server. So the output of the, in a similar way, the output of the client, of the server will serve as the input to the client, and the buffered reader class is being used to accept the data that is being sent by the client to the server. Okay, so this code does the following: get the socket's input and output stream and opens the readers and writers on them, initiates communication with the client by writing to the socket shown in bold, communicates with the client by reading from and writing to the socket. So we are not going to go into the details of this program. So let us now go back to what we had originally set out to do, that is to check whether a number is automorphic or not. So first of all, let me open the client side program. So this is the client side code for running for creating this kind of problem, for solving this kind of problem. First of all, we are going to import a couple of packages, that is the java.io package, which houses all the classes and methods that are required for the buffered reader class, print stream class, and so on. Then we are going to import the java.net class, which contains the in which the classes related to socket and other associated functions are defined. And then finally we are going to import the java.util class, in which the scanner class is defined. So here in case of our program, instead of using buffered reader to take input, we'll be using the scanner class, which is a lot easier to use. So that for that particular reason we have imported the java.util class, util package, because the scanner class is defined in the java.util package. So I've seen some of you importing the java.lang package in your programs, but that is not actually required, because java.lang is imported by default. So explicitly importing it at the beginning of your program is not needed. Okay, so first of all, what they have done is, so here we haven't used the try catch statement, so that's why we have in the main method we have thrown IO exception and unknown hosts exception. So first of all, we are taking a number, which is an integer value, and then a temp value, which is a boolean value, because we have seen in the program that when we are going to check a number is automorphic or not, the server will return a boolean value back to the client. So the boolean value may be true or false. So to accept that value, we are assigning a variable called boolean temp. So it is a value of type boolean, and the name of the variable is temp. So now we have created an object of the socket class, and we are binding it to the local host. So as we are going to be running it on our system, not on any server, so we are binding it to our loopback address, which is the local host, or you can simply type actually the IP address of localhost, which is defined as 127.0.0.1, I think. So there is a hosts file inside Windows, and it contains the mapping of localhost to its corresponding IP address. So here we have changed the localhost to 127.0.0.1. so it is the same thing as writing localhost. It doesn't matter what you write, both are going to work just fine. And after that we are binding it to the port number 1450. Then what we are going to do is, we are going to take a number as input from the user. So we want to know whether a number is automorphic or not. So for that reason we are not randomly assigning a number, but we are taking a number as input from the console by the user. So when the program will run, the user will be inputting some data, that is a numerical value, and this program will check whether the numerical value is automorphic or not. So then we are going to send the data to the server for processing using the object of printstream class. So in this documentation they had used the printwriter class. So instead of printwriter over here, we are going to use the printstream class. So the printstream class, like printwriter, it can also write formatted data to any output stream. So in case of us, it is the output stream associated with the socket, which is ss.getOutputStream. So to actually send the data with the output stream, we are using the println statement. So generally we use the println statement with the system.out command a lot. So in that case, what it does is it prints to the output stream, which is actually the console. So here instead of system.out, we are using p.println, and where p is the object of the printstream class. So we are actually sending the number to the server using the printstream output. And next we have created a scanner class once again, and we have assigned a new object to the scanner class called sc2, and we are using it to get the data that is being sent by the server to the client. So whenever the server is sending some data to the client, that is actually the input to the client. So for that reason we have used the scanner class, because we know that using scanner class you can take a wide variety of variables as input. So here we are going to input so here what we are going to do is, we are going to okay, so we are going to create an object of the scanner class, and we are going to associate it with the input stream of the socket object, which is ss. So the output of the server will be the input to the client, and here it is the server will actually send a boolean value, not an integer value. It will send a boolean value. It will check the number whether it's automorphic or not, and then it will send a boolean value depending on whether it is automorphic or not automorphic. So if it is indeed automorphic, it will send true, else it will send false. And finally it will check the print the status of automorphic number, whether it is indeed an automorphic number or not. So now let me take a look at the server code for this particular program. So in a similar way, imported three classes: java.net, java.util, and java.io class. So as I've told you before, the java.net package, so I may have made a mistake. They are not actually importing these classes, these are actually packages. So this java.net package, it contains the definition of all the socket objects and the socket classes. Java.util package contains the definition for the scanner class, and IO package contains the definition for the buffered reader objects, print reader and print writer objects, and so on. So first of all, they have created a socket object associated with the server socket, and they have bound it to the port number 1450. So in the previous tab, you may have seen that when we are creating an object of the local host, we are also binding it to the same port. So the client and server, they must be configured to be sending data or operating on the same particular port. So the client's port must be the same as that of the server's port. If you are listening to a particular port on the server and the client is listening to a different port, then it is not going to work. After that, we are going to create an object of the socket object of the socket class, and we are going to use it to accept the incoming connection from the client, like we have seen in this documentation. So here what they have said is, after it binds to the port, the server socket object is successfully created, and the server continues to the next step, accepting a connection from the client. So this is actually done to accept an incoming connection from the client. So and after that, it prints a message called server started. So that is optional, you can skip this part. And then what we are doing is, we are accepting the data that is being sent by the client using scanner class. So using scanner class, we are taking the data sent by the client for checking using the scanner object. So that object's name is sc2, and using sc2 we are accepting the number that is, so here using sc2 we are accepting the number as input which is being sent by the client. So the client is actually sending a number for analysis. So here you can see we have entered a number in the client side, and we are sending the data from the client side to the server side by the printstream class, and we do it so that the server can take the number and it can check whether it is automorphic or not. So this number that is being sent by the client using p.println num, this is being used by the server object to check whether it is automorphic or not. And to accept that particular number, what we are doing is, we are accepting it using sc2.nextInt, where sc2 is the object of scanner class, and then we are writing received. And now we come to the part where we actually check whether a number is automorphic or not. So once it receives the number from the client, we actually have to check whether a number is automorphic or not. And if it is automorphic, we are going to send that boolean value true to the client, else we'll be sending false. So initially we have created, I think we have already created a boolean value over here. So first of all, what we do is, we create a value called square, and we perform the squares of the numbers that are sent by the client to the server. And then we are going to create a boolean value whose status will be true by default. And then we are actually coming to the part where we check whether the number is automorphic or not. So in every iteration, what we do is, as long as there are digits in the number which is being squared, we are extracting a digit from the end of that number and from the end of the squared value. So if we are talking about 5 and 25, we are going to extract a number simultaneously from the original number, that is 5, that is from the end of the original number, that is 5, and also from the end of the squared value. So if the squared value is 25, the number at the end will be 5. So we are going to extract both of them at the same time, and we are going to compare them. So if it is automorphic number, there will be no differences, because like in case of 25, not 25, let me just check. Like in case of 76, we have got 7 and 6 at the end of the square, and we have also got 7 and 6 at the inside the original number. So if we compare 7 with 7 and 6 with 6, we'll get an exact match. So this is what is being done here. We are extracting a number from the end of both the numbers, that is the squared value as well as the original value, and we are checking whether it is similar or not. And if at any stage any similarity is not detected, so it will terminate. So if at any stage we find that the numbers are not matching up, so let us take the example of 11. So 11 square gives us 121. So in the first iteration we'll be extracting 1 and 1 from both the numbers, but in the next iteration, when we extract 2 from the square value and 1 from the original one from the original number that is being checked here, and first of all we'll be taking 1 from 11, the end of 11, and 1 from the squared value, that is 121, and there will be a match. And then we'll be extracting 1 again from there will be one more digit remaining, which is 1 in 11. We'll be extracting that, and we'll be comparing with 2, which is present at the end of 121, and so 1 and 2 will not be a match, so it is not going to be an automorphic number. So at the end of 121 there is no 11, which is actually the original number, so 121 will not be a automorphic number. Sorry, 11 is not going to be an automorphic number, because there is no 11 present at the end of the square of 11, which is 121. So if at any stage a mismatch is found, the status changes from true to false, and we break out of the loop. And after that we are dividing num with 10 and square with 10 to delete the last number from the end of both numbers. And after it is checked, what we are doing is we are obtaining an output stream associated with that particular socket, which is SK, and we are sending the data via the output stream through the client. So here println actually prints the data from the server to the client's input stream. Okay, it goes from the server's output stream to the client's input stream. So let us now run the program and check how it is supposed to be done. So remember that in these kinds of programs you will have to run the server first and then write the client code. So if you fail to do that, the program will definitely not work, because to be able to communicate with the server, you will have to make sure that the server is actually running in the first place. So if you are running a client and we want to establish a connection to a server, and there is no server which is listening to that particular port number desired by the client, then it will result in an error. So then we are taking the print stream object and we are printing it to the output stream of println, output stream of this socket, and we are simply outputting the status, which is true or false. So if the number is automorphic, we'll be sending the status as true, else if at any stage the number doesn't turn out to be an automorphic, then the status will be false. And then in the client side, what they will do is they will take the value that is being sent by the client, that is the server. So after checking whether the number is automorphic or not automorphic, the server will communicate back with the client, and the server will inform the client that using a boolean value, that is true false, whether the number is automorphic or not. Okay, so so let us first run a program and check whether what happens. So here they are going to accept the value sent by the client and it will print it out. So first of all, I'll be executing the server and then I'll be executing the client. So the server must be online before you can actually run the client program. Remember that while we are dealing with this kind of programs. And now we are going to run the client code. So we are going to enter 76. So automorphic status is true. So let me just increase the gap between this check and temp value. Once again, let me run the programs once more to check a number that is not automorphic, say 11, as I've told you before. So automorphic status check is false. So this is our tutorial that goes into great lengths to explain how you can actually communicate between the client and server using sockets. So I hope this demonstration has cleared things up for you, and if you need to study the process of using sockets to communicate from the client and server and vice versa, you can study the primer on socket programming that is available on Oracle's website, because it explains everything in much more details than I can possibly describe in a short tutorial video. So if you want to now learn more about socket programming, you can definitely consult with this particular website. I'll be leaving a link for this in the description box. So that's all for now, and hopefully I'll see you all in my next video. And if you have any queries, please leave them in the comment section. Okay, thanks to all of you.